kick off. So welcome everyone to this first event in our LexisNexis UK AI Insider Programme. My name is Mark Smith. I'm the Director of Strategic Markets here at LexisNexis. And we've got a genuinely all-star panel here today. Before I introduce them, let me just set the scene a little bit for us all, because in some ways it feels really as this generative AI wave really has come out of nowhere. And 30th November last year, so almost a year ago now, ChatGPT arrived on the scene. And by January, it had 100 million users, which is quite staggering. It was the fastest adoption of a consumer technology platform that the world had ever seen at a time. And really, it did just seem as though OpenAI magicked this out of nowhere. But the reality was it became possible because of a series of underlying technology trends. So firstly, there was this continued increase in computing power. Now, many of you will have probably heard of Moore's Law, the idea that every 18 months, computing power roughly doubles. And that's held true for well over a decade now. And it began to slow down as transistors got smaller and smaller, but increasingly sophisticated ways of manufacturing chips has allowed that law to stay true. And while this power continued to increase, the cost has dropped, and that's driven largely by the adoption of cloud computing. So we're in a world where computing power is just increasing massively, and the cost of that has dropped. And to give you an analogy, if you look at, say, the difference between the iPhone 4 and the iPhone 12, the equivalent increase in computing power is like the difference between a car that had a maximum speed of 70 miles an hour. Over that 10-year period, that's like a car now that would have the escape velocity of Earth, which is 25,500 miles per hour. So that's the order of magnitude that we're talking about. Now, alongside the hardware improvements, there were a couple of really important progressions in artificial intelligence technology. And the first one was machine learning, which is all about allowing pattern recognition, prediction, and decision-making by computers. And that was getting increasingly sophisticated. And alongside that, we had natural language processing, which allows machines to understand human language. And that got to the level at which it began to understand semantics, so meaning and context. And those two things together then allowed computers to identify, classify, and retrieve information from increasingly vast and complex data sets. The final piece of the puzzle was then training data. And over the last number of years, we've seen huge amount of digitization of information, whether that's from books, whether that's vast troves of social media data. And all of those things together then allowed the creation of these foundational models. And the machines could not just retrieve information from them, but could then start to generate information, whether that was in text, image, or code form, that was similar to the information they trained on. And that broadly brings us into the world of generative, because it's generating new information, artificial intelligence. And what OpenAI did was put a very simple but very effective chatbot web-based front end on, which suddenly made this technology available to everyone. Now, huge impact on society at large, I think it's fair to say, and the media impact was unsurprisingly large as well. And there were no shortage of headlines relating to the legal profession. Lawyers, is this the end of lawyers, et cetera, et cetera. So here at Lexis, we wanted to know what was really going on. So we waited 6 months, and then in June, we went out to the market and spoke to about 1,200 legal professionals all across the market, from lawyers in practice, from small law firms, medium-sized law firms, to big law firms, to in-house counsel, private and public sector, to academics, to members of the bar. And what we found in some ways surprised us. So awareness of generative AI at that point was 87%, which was much higher than the general population. We found 36% of the people we spoke to had used the technology in a personal capacity. 10% were already using this for legal work, and 40% plan to. Of the people that had used it, 49% expected a significant or transformational effect on the legal profession. Now, I've worked in legal technology for over 25 years, initially as a lawyer in practice and in-house, and then subsequently in commercial roles. And I've never seen adoption of any legal technology on that sort of scale. And there are lots of different reasons why that might be, but I think for me, two really stand out. One is the simplicity and ease of use of this technology. It's a text-based interface for the most part. And as lawyers, we're trained to use language to be very sophisticated and precise in the use of our language. So the more we play with this, the more we find we can be really effective with it. And the second is what we call an omni-use technology. There are many, many different potential use cases for it as the technology matures. And if you look at previous generations of legal AI technology, they were quite practice specific. It may be e-disclosure or it may be due diligence on transactional. But for many lawyers, there really wasn't a core use case. Whereas while we're in the early days of this technology, the potential is arguably much wider. Now, last week, Lexis in the US launched its first generative AI product. It covers 3 key use cases: conversational research, summarization of documents, legislation cases, and drafting. Now, there will be plenty of opportunities in future events to kind of explore what we're doing and how it works. But today is not about that. Today is about voices from the field. What are the leading people in this area actually doing on the ground at the moment? And this is where I get to, with some pride, introduce this phenomenal panel that we have assembled for you. I'm really grateful to you all for giving up your time. So quick introductions. So first we have Clive Davies. Clive is a senior counsel at technology giant Fujitsu. Prior to moving in-house, Clive was a technology partner in 2 leading city law firms and is also a fellow and former chair of the Society for Computers and Law. Joining Clive, we have Rachel Brocard. Rachel is the Service Excellence Partner at global law firm Evershed Sutherland. Rachel's background was as a transactional lawyer and has for many years been leading initiatives within the firm around the cutting-edge deployment of technology. And indeed, back in 2017, was one of the first firms to implement electronic signatures globally. And she and the team picked up recognition at the FT Innovative Lawyer Award as a result of that. And rounding out the panel is Nigel Ray. Nigel is the Managing Director for Global Clients at alternative legal service providers Lawyers on Demand. Nigel began his career as a management consultant at Accenture before leading the strategy team at a city law firm, and then spending 3 glorious years at LexisNexis as our head of technology solutions before joining Lawyers on Demand, where they bring different versions of process, people, and technology to solve legal problems in an innovative manner. So welcome all on board. Now, I asked our panel as a cheeky little icebreaker to go away and use generative AI to create a metaphor or an image of the impact this technology is going to have on the legal profession. So, Clive, what did you come up with?
Thanks, Mark, and hi, everybody. So I used ChatGPT, which came up with the following. Generative AI in the legal realm is akin to a brilliant assistant, tirelessly sifting through vast libraries of legal knowledge, illuminating the path for lawyers like a digital lighthouse in the sea of jurisprudence.
Beautifully read, Clive. I think you've missed your calling as a performance poet. Rachel, what about you? What did you come up with?
Yeah, so again, in the interest of transparency, I used Bing for this task. And the one that I came up with was generative AI is like a lightning bolt that strikes the ancient tree of law. It can either ignite a fire that consumes the old branches and leaves, or fertilize the soil and stimulate new growth and diversity. The legal profession must decide how to harness this powerful force and shape its future direction.
Fabulous, thank you. So I like that kind of, is this a force for good or is it a challenge? And we're going to explore that in a bit more detail. Nigel, what did you and the machines come up with for us?
Well, here we go. Generative AI is the grim reaper of billable hours, looming over the legal profession like a relentless, tireless spectre. It threatens to slash through the ranks of legal tasks with the scythe of automation, leaving lawyers and their traditional roles as mere ghosts of a bygone era, while clients, lured by the efficiency and cost of effectiveness, dance with the devil of AI, sealing the fate of the legal profession in a macabre tango of obsolescence.
That is something else, Nigel.
It was Halloween when I did it. It was, it was a bit spooky. And again, ChatGPT.
Fabulous, thank you. So maybe there's some hope and joy in there for a tingle of suspense for those of us in practice. Fantastic. So let's move on then to the here and now. What I'm interested in is we've got three very different organizations and three very different roles in our panel, and that was deliberate. So what I'm interested in now is how you and your organizations are actually using this technology now. And let me go to you, Rachel, for a start.
Yeah, thanks, Mark. So we've been using AI in our organization for a number of years, including e-discovery, contract review for both contentious and non-contentious work. So referencing some of the machine learning and NLP that you referred to earlier, Mark. AI is also used across our knowledge teams, and we have chatbots as well to help people access information. An example of using AI from our pro bono program is where we worked with students in the Georgia State Legal Analytics Lab and members of the non-profit Amicus, which is an anti-death penalty organisation, to use AI to sift through data and court documents related to death penalty cases in Florida, with the intention that the research would help lawyers in the representation and advocacy for death penalty defendants. This year, clearly, we've been undertaking an in-depth R&D programme in relation to Gen AI and some of the newer AI solutions that have come to market as a result of the advent of Gen AI. Ultimately, where we start with is the firm's purpose, which is to help our clients, our people, and our communities to thrive. And we've asked ourselves the question, can Gen AI help us achieve that purpose? And the conclusion that we've reached is yes, we believe it can. And our executives have been very clear on this point. Due to confidentiality, I'm restricted on sharing specifics on this, but what I can share is that we have crowdsourced over 150 business problems that our people believe are AI solvable. Now, those break down into about 50% of those relate to the business of law, so finance, IT, marketing, HR, that sort of thing. And then 50% to the practice of law, what lawyers actually do day to day. We've been working through the prioritisation of these, and for each of these that have been prioritised, we're looking at the proof of value, total cost of ownership, return on investment, and of course implementation in line with our responsible business programme, which is really important to us in terms of the way that we do business. So really thinking about responsible AI in that context. There's a point around the timing of domain-specific solutions coming to market. We want to make sure that we've got the right solutions for the right problems. What's really exciting for me about the current hype on generative AI is that many professionals now believe that Gen AI can help them carry out their work. And also with the excitement of seeing so many vendors coming to market, either with new solutions or improvements to existing solutions through the application of Gen AI. One of the tasks that my team is undertaking is reviewing the business problems that we've identified that we think are solvable by whether it's Gen AI that solves that problem, or perhaps whether there's some other technology, maybe some more traditional AI, machine learning, or more standard automation that can solve the problem in perhaps a simpler, less expensive manner, or whether Gen AI is the route that we need to take. So really focusing on what that business value is that can be delivered. And of course, can't really talk about AI without also talking about data. And over the past few years, we've invested and continue to invest in our data and analytics capabilities and infrastructure, as well as data governance framework. And hopefully that puts us in a good place to move forward and take advantage of the latest developments. So that's a brief summary of where we're at, Mark.
Fantastic, thank you. And there are a few, I mean, there's lots in there, but I think you've highlighted in a sense that you had that foundation as a firm of, it didn't just come out of nowhere. So whether it's the data, whether it's your experience with previous technologies, that's a platform on which to build. But I think it's also interesting that, you know, here we are 9 months or so probably after you really started looking at this, where already there's potentially 150 use cases, and that's phenomenal. I think, again, for the people watching this, there should be some comfort in there that actually there are so many ways that you can think about this. Fabulous. Okay, and I think the final thing to point is the enthusiasm that comes through when you talk about this. Genuinely, there is a sense of excitement in the market. Nigel, what about you? Your experience of where it's being used at the moment?
Yeah, I'll try and give you three examples. I think the first is within LOD. So for those that might not be aware, LOD, we are a flexible resourcing business. So we provide lawyers and we match them to amazing roles, whether that's via secondments or through managed services. We developed something called Match, which is it is a tool that we're using now to take inbound requests, so from clients, and match this to our global talent pool of over 20,000 lawyers. We've enriched this data with information that we pick up with our lawyers around how they want to work, working patterns. So call logs we have with our clients will feed into this, call logs with our lawyers feed into this, and it allows us to create a very quick view of who's really best placed for the roles that we want to deploy them to. We're seeing in early stages with Match, the time between getting great assignments and matching those to lawyers, that's dramatically come down. And we're also seeing a better engagement with our lawyers. We're getting the right kind of roles out to lawyers at pace. I think one thing to mention, we're scaling this in the new year, but we will be building this around humans. So the decision making is always going to be done by our lawyer engagement team. So this is a recommendation engine. It will do cool things like wildcards, so giving us different proposals of lawyers, but ultimately it will be judgments of humans that will be applied here. We're also looking at how we use the tooling to generate proposals in terms of summarization of the teams we want to put together for clients. So that's kind of where that's going. Our sister business, Psych, are a legal technology business. They specialize in helping primarily in-house teams understand how to make the most of generative AI. So that's on the consulting side. So helping them understand how to go about Gen AI within legal, particularly the kind of on-prem, off-prem discussions and that kind of stuff. And then the final bit, a bit of context around this. We, LOD and Psych, we become part of Concilio. So Concilio are one of the largest ALSPs on the planet, and they have a real strength and depth in e-discovery and document review. Many of the things Rachel mentioned there. I connected in with the Concilio team that are running experiments and actual product build out in this space, and what they're working on. They've built basically a front end that will sit on either our platforms or third-party platforms that allow our reviewers to have a very natural engagement with the review technology. So in essence, reviewing, instead of having to understand complex syntax, what you're actually doing is you're working as if you're talking to a colleague, right? So I really care about this, find me this, help me illustrate this. So it's actually something that's allowed us to rethink the structure of review teams. And on top of this, we're also looking at it for summarization, risk summarization, many of the things Rachel's mentioned. There's an open pilot we have out. So if you are a corporate that wants to understand what this means for e-discovery document review, more than happy to connect you to that.
Thanks, Nigel. So a couple of interesting things there. So one is the sense of the benefits that you're seeing. So you talked about processes happening faster and with greater engagement. That I think is really interesting. The second thing that I'll just pick up and connect to what Rachel said was, you used the word experimenting. Rachel used research and development, and actually for lawyers, those are perhaps not words that we come across frequently. But this idea of, with this new technology, one of the best things that you can do is play with it, experiment, and I think that's a really good lesson for the people watching. Final point is, you mentioned on-prem and off-prem. For those outside the tech industry, on-premises, off-premises is this technology you host on your own servers versus externally on the cloud. Fabulous. Clive, what about you? Very different environment for you being an in-house counsel within a tech company. What are you seeing?
Yeah, let me give you my sort of personal views on this and my perspective. I think I'll divide it into two, sort of Fujitsu itself as a business and then our legal function. I think in Fujitsu, I saw a demonstration recently of how we're using AI in one of our technology centers, and it's really quite staggering. It helps us in providing services to our customers. And a really simple example, which they showed, was how to improve the energy efficiency of a building, which actually sounds simple, but is a really, really complex idea. And you can apply generative AI to help you doing that. So as a business, we're really finding that we're taking it on board. In the legal function, we've been trying internally to get people to practice using AI to see how it works, because it keeps moving all the time. And there are some basic things it can help you with, like setting up contract repositories. But I think the thing that's really interesting is how it acts as an interface with your customers or clients. So we've already automated our requests for legal services internally, and we've got a chat bot and we provide guidance. And we've got the creation of standard documents set up so that our internal customers can create NDAs and consultancy agreements. Now, AI will move this forward, and the moving forward with the AI-powered chatbots will encourage this sort of self-help. But what I say here is that it's all very well, but you also need to educate your clients to how you're using that. And I think this will be even more so with law firms. As you use client-facing AI, as opposed to AI supporting your lawyers, you'll need to take your clients on that journey with you. Within our function, we've also been looking at contracts and developing AI clauses to include in them. We've got a proof of concept agreement where we've got a standalone set of AI clauses. And we've been helped in doing that by, Mark mentioned the Society for Computers and Law. In October, they published a really helpful set of standard clauses for AI contracts. And these were divided into provisions for out-of-the-box solutions and for bespoke solutions. And that's really helpful because the responsibility for training, the responsibility for what happens to an AI engine when you're using it depends on whether it's just something you've taken as stands or whether you've really developed that for yourself. Mark, I believe LexisNexis contributed to those discussions, which was really good. And finally, just something really interesting. like Rachel, we had a pro bono project we were participating on recently, and it involved doing legal research to ascertain how a young person could get an ID card, but in Greece. Now, we'd no knowledge of Greece law practice at all. But what we did was we used a combination of ChatGPT, Bing, and Google, and we asking for sources. We got a sort of really reasonable set of general answers. And then we went away and verified those using Greek government websites and Google Translate. And it was amazing how accurate the ChatGPT actually was. And we were able to create a reasonable response. Mark, it's all moving.
Fantastic, really interesting, Clive. And I think from an in-house perspective, that gives a hint as to how some of the dynamics with law firms and what you can do internally might be changing. But I also like this idea of education and thinking about transparency. And that really takes me on to the next area I want to explore, which is it's very easy to paint this as the land of milk and honey and everything is amazing and it's really exciting. But it's also very clear there is a narrative around risk. And it's something that as a legal profession, we're very conscious of. We manage risks on behalf of our clients. We need to manage our own risks. And then there is, of course, the wider existential risk that the media is not shy of sharing. So, Nigel, what are the kind of key risks you're thinking about, and how are you going about managing those?
Yeah, I mean, I sense that probably all three of us on the panel will have similar approaches. So I'll kind of keep this one brief, but I guess it goes back to the principles of what we're trying to do, regardless of how we're applying Gen AI. It's this concept of kind of lawyer in the loop. So the decision maker, the decisions have to be made by the team that are responsible for making decisions. So we're not creating anything that is going to generate the answer. It will generate the recommendation, or to the point around match, it would generate probably a broader set of options than we would have done if we just think about, oh, this person would be great for this role. So all of our design is around, well, what are the decision points and how do we ensure that there's an appropriate level of person making the right decision based on the information they have. And the second, when we're working through any of the projects we're working on, standard approaches around just the testing, the rigorous testing that goes into this to make sure that the answers that are generated or the summarization is in line with what we would expect. And to do that many different ways, including we run both AI teams, AI plus people teams and people teams, right? And we just make sure that what we're finding is in line with what we should be doing. Those are just some of the approaches. But there is, a level of newness with this. And I think as long as you go into this aware of risks and understanding of how you want to build your process around those or managing those, I think you'll be okay. Something we've done as well is making sure we set up multidisciplinary teams from the start. So actually, this isn't just a technology team running at something. It's a team with technologists, analysts, lawyers, e-discovery veterans all in there, and they actually understand a wider portfolio of risks and are able to solve as they go. Those are just some of the approaches. Thanks,
Nigel. I like that. So really clear human in the loop, whether it's training, whether it's execution, but also that diversity, multidisciplinary approach to get different perspectives on risk, which is a really interesting angle. Rachel, what about you?
Yes, I mentioned previously our responsible business programme, which is really important to us in the way we do business. And it's therefore super important that what we do in relation to the implementation of AI sits alongside that programme. The number one risk for me is the potential to lose trust with our clients if we deploy AI in the wrong way. Importantly, as legal professionals, we owe a duty of care to our clients, both in terms of the output of our work and in terms of ensuring that we protect their data. And I'm talking here about important issues such as the duty of confidentiality, data privacy, legal privilege, the need to avoid bias and misinformation. And these are really important risks that we need to look at and mitigate. We're a regulated industry. We've got obligations to our clients. And also our professional indemnity insurers have a place to play here, and we need to be mindful of them as well. I've been working very closely with our data and analytics team, our infosec team, our governance and compliance team, all of whom sit on our AI task force, and it's important that they are there and part of the team. I'd say 70 to 80% of any successful digital transformation is about people and change management. And one of the most important things that we've done to date to manage these risks is to invest in providing training to our people to ensure that they understand this technology, the benefits that it brings, and the risks associated with it. If people do not understand the capabilities and limitations of the technology that they use when they're carrying out their work, then there's a risk that they don't comply with their duty of care. We've recently announced our involvement with a consortium of law firms and an organisation called Skillburst to develop a first of its kind training programme on generative AI for law firms that we're in the process of rolling out across our organisation globally, to ensure that everyone has the opportunity to learn about the benefits of the technology, but also how to use it in a safe and secure way. Like Nigel, our AI roadmap clearly sets out that we believe in people and technology in partnership. That's to say, ensuring that we have a human expert in the loop to ensure that we provide the best outcomes for clients. And essentially what we're doing is augmenting the way in which our people work and ensuring that we do so in a way that delivers excellence. And the final point I'd make on this, Mark, is the point around the concern around bias. And there needs to continue to be a focus on diversity, equity, and inclusion to mitigate that risk of bias. And that focus on diversity and inclusion needs to be thought about in the context of the makeup of teams. And Nigel, you alluded to that also in terms of having that diversity of skills, but also that diversity of backgrounds, making sure that we have the voice of minorities in terms of how we take this forward.
Brilliant. Thanks, Rachel. And so I guess echoing Nigel's kind of centrality of human in the loop, you've kind of expanded on that, really talking about not just the diversity of people, but the need to increase the skill base to train people. And that, again, that multidisciplinary, transparent approach really comes through. Thank you. Clive, what about you in terms of risks and managing those?
Yeah, I agree with Nigel and Rachel. It really depends on what the AI is used for. If it's in the form of like an intelligent assistant, which is sort of where it is at the moment, then I think the risks are manageable. If AI services become more independent and unsupervised and they start to supplement or replace lawyers, then I think there's a greater risk, but both to the profession and to its clients. The UK AI Safety Summit at Bletchley Park, which you probably read about on the 1st and 2nd of November, agreed a joint statement calling for global cooperation to tackle the risks of AI. The Bletchley Declaration, as they called it, recognizes that it presents enormous global opportunities, but should be developed in a way that is human-centric, trustworthy, and responsible. I think now the risks are over-reliance on AI. There was a New York case where a lawyer used AI for research, but it hallucinated. It made some cases up, and he actually asked where it had found the cases, and it said Westlaw, but it hadn't. So currently, you've got to manage how you're using AI. It isn't perfect. You need to check the sources, verify what's happening. And I think as legal professionals, we should have a fundamental oversight in a firm's or in-house department use of AI as a technology. And in the States, they're looking in some of the states at the rules in the Bar Council about oversight and use of technology to try and regulate that. One of the things that has been mentioned is I think there's a potentially challenging educational issue for lawyers. I found an LSE article that said that the technology is advancing quickly, but the lawyers practicing it have no training in data science or algorithms or AI. There's an information gap affecting the profession, and that the future use of AI will require lawyers to upskill and learn at least the basics of these technologies, which I think is is very pertinent to us. I think the thing is, I remember a story that when radar was first introduced onto ships, it was seen as a potential risk, but it rapidly became an essential safety feature. Without ship operators could possibly be liable in the event of an incident. Now, I think with lawyers, that's what's going to happen with AI, that as things develop, we'll be expected to be using AI. And if we don't use AI, we'll be falling behind the game. So, Mark, those are my thoughts.
Fabulous, thank you. And that, that sense of the importance of education, I think, plays on really well to what Rachel was talking about. And it's great for the people here that they're investing their time. A couple of things I'll just mention for that. So on that kind of risks things, at LexisNexis, we have the RELX Principles for Responsible Development of AI, which we've been following for a number of years now. So if you're interested, do have a look at those. And one of the questions that we often get asked is, how do we manage this issue of hallucinations? You mentioned the famous US case. A little bit of technical detail here, but one of the ways of managing this is something called retrieval augmented generation. And this is the idea that when a user prompts a generative AI engine, the engine can then effectively turn that into semantic analysis and turn it into a search. It can then target that search at a trusted set of legal information rather than the kind of general mass of trained data in a consumer grade system, and then bring back very specific sources from that database to the generative answer, then turns it into natural text and provides citations. And that's how the Lexis product we've launched in the US worked. So some really interesting risks in there, but it starts, it feels in a good place in that people aren't burying their heads in the sand. You're all thinking about this. You're all taking responsibility for it, which I think is a nice place to begin this journey. Thinking then about where's this all going and maybe looking at some of the opportunities as well. If you kind of project forward a little bit, Clive, you talked a little bit about lawyers being like radar. Where do you see this going?
So it's interesting. I saw Richard Susskind talking at an SCL event, and he was really saying is that AI has been around for a long time, and I think we sometimes forget that. What has happened with generative AI is that it's suddenly accelerated, and I think that's the message that is the most critical thing for us as lawyers. That means we can't ignore this. I'm excited and maybe a little scared by the rapid evolution of AI in a professional context. I found a PwC quote which I'll read, which I think sums up where I am at the moment. I think it helps clients solve their most important problems by combining human ingenuity and understanding with the right technology. Human-led and technology-enabled. So human-led and technology-enabled. I think that AI will become more and more acceptable and utilized as a part of digital transformation. It'll be an intelligent assistant, and it will free us up for tasks that add greater value. We'll be able to move up the value chain, such as thinking and advising. I think it will gradually take on more tasks that lawyers are doing. I saw a quote from a Goldman Sachs report on AI that said 44% of the tasks in the legal profession could be automated by AI, which is quite a staggering number. At present, it's something that needs to be used and verified and checked. An example of current intelligent use of AI is by my son. He's a university lecturer and researcher, and he needed, for some research he was doing, to create some coding. He could have done it himself, but he used AI to help him with the coding. And what he found was that it came back with some good answers, but he kept needing to check and correct it. And he kept asking again and again for it to get it right. But it did give him the basic building blocks, and he got it right in the end. And it saved him a lot of time. So I think this is going to be generally a good thing, Mark.
Fabulous. Thanks, Clive. And again, this combination of humans and technology is starting to emerge as a trend. And it's perhaps an overused cliche, but one of the refrains I hear most often in the market is, this is not lawyers versus technology, it's technology and lawyers versus lawyers alone. Nigel, what about you? Painted a picture of the future.
I mean, I'm pretty aligned to what Clive said there. I think I'll just give a bit of context. As probably the only non-lawyer on this call, although my mum thinks I'm a lawyer. So if you ever meet her, don't tell her otherwise. That really helped me personally. But I think I'm looking forward to it, removing the busy work. If you think about your day-to-day, there's a lot of time I spend messing around with spreadsheets, messing around with PowerPoint, trying to get my, get views across, doing exec level presentations. And I think I'm really looking forward to it being rolled out into the tools we use day in, day out. I'm really looking forward to seeing it really deployed really well in the, if you're a Microsoft or the Google stack, whatever you're using for your day-to-day work. But I think there's also something about, building on whatever Gen AI does for you. It's never going to give you the perfect answer. I spend a lot of my time responding to RFPs. So if you're on this call and you create RFPs or you respond to them, you'll know they're pretty big technical documents. You could see a world where there are hundreds of hours of responding. It's been turned into something where you kind of generate the answers, but we'll probably end up with variations that are similar to the examples that we all gave at the start with, tell us about what does Gen AI mean for lawyers, i.e. they'll be quite similar. And filling in an RFP is not the answer, is not going to win you the RFP. It's actually how do you overlay your understanding of the client, your passion for winning the work, that uniqueness that means your organization is best placed to deliver it. And I think that's the kind of, my view on this is we have to use these building blocks, much to Clive's point with his son, use those building blocks to get the right answer. But ultimately, his son was the one that took it over the line. And finally, in terms of what this means for legal, I think if we fixate too much on what it means for legal, I think we'll miss. There's going to be some big changes in industry and changes in ways of working, changes in our organizations or the corporates we work in. And I think if we look at Gen AI or AI and its development through a legal lens, we'll miss the bigger changes that are probably going to happen upstream that will then impact all of us. So I'd encourage us to keep aligned to legal, but actually think about where is your organization going and what does that mean for the role of your team within it.
Fabulous, thanks, Nigel. So opportunity both in terms of the day-to-day work and the busy work, as you called it, but also not losing sight of the bigger picture organizational changes, and presumably as well for our clients, those changes are going to create extra opportunities, new categories of legal work that don't currently exist. Rachel, what about you?
Yeah, I mean, clearly as our clients transform their business with AI, there will be new areas of AI law where clients need help and support. I'm not going to touch on that in this session because I think that's a bit out of scope. My role really is to help our business deliver service excellence through well-designed, tech-enabled legal service delivery. And I'm always excited to explore how advancements in technology can help me achieve that objective. And I think to my early days as a lawyer and the experience I had of sitting in physical data rooms, and I think to sort of the later days of my practicing career when technology had transformed the way that I did my work, and it was much more fun and enjoyable, frankly, than when I started off in the profession. So I think that trend of enabling lawyers to do more of what they enjoy doing will continue, and that's really important. I think the potential is there to help legal professionals improve outcomes for clients, as well as providing benefits to lawyers in the way that they undertake their day-to-day tasks. But I do think it's necessary to remain focused on the business value that will be delivered and the return on investment, and not simply just get carried away with shiny new toys. I'm also excited to see the potential for Gen AI to improve access to justice, and also see how it can help support our responsible business programme. But I think one of the more interesting points here, Mark, is not just what the opportunities will be, but how we ensure that those opportunities are actually delivered and deliver that value. And in order, excuse me, in order to take advantage of the opportunities presented, by Gen AI, it's more important than ever to focus on people and change management, because it doesn't matter how powerful the technology may be, you need to ensure that your people have got the skills and the desire to use it. And that's why, at Eversheds, we've over the past few years invested in technology awareness and training. So we had Techtember 2019. We followed that up with Techtober 2021, which was a global technology awareness month, including a hackathon across our organisation. And then 2023, it's our Gen AI skills burst training that we're rolling out. So investing in that people and change management. We've also invested in employing legal technologists, legal project managers, change managers to work closely with lawyers to support them with that digital transformation programme. And I don't think the need for that will go away if we're to make the most of the opportunities that are on the horizon.
Fabulous, thanks, Rachel. So I really like that, opportunities for lawyers in terms of making life more fun, doing the bits of work that are more satisfying. That links, I think, to Nigel's point, but also then bigger picture opportunities in terms of just improving client service and what we provide, and that links nicely with Clive's radar analogy. And then also some of the bigger access to justice pictures. Now, I do have a final question for you, but I want to start to bring in some questions that we've had from the audience. And the first one is a really interesting one that says, and I'll paraphrase, this is from Paul. Thanks for the question, Paul. The question is, this all sounds great for large organizations with big resources, big data sets, etc. But if you were a smaller law firm, what should you be doing? What's the strategy? Is it technology alliances? Should you be a first follower? Something else? I'll let you think about this. I'll just share my thoughts while you mull that over. Paul, one of the things that I would do personally is the £20 a month I pay for a ChatGPT Plus subscription, for me, is phenomenal value for money. And I was thinking the other day, what would I do if I was still in practice? And in 5 minutes, I gave it this situation. I said, imagine I'm a technology partner in a law firm, and I want to run a 90-minute workshop at lunch for one of my big telco clients. Can you give me 10 different ideas for the workshops that none of my competitors would have thought through? It came up with 10 really interesting ideas. I picked one. I said, fabulous, now plan me out the workshop. It did it. Every 10-minute segment, you're going to do this, 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 and this. Now give me a really compelling workshop title, provide me some text to invite my client, and generate me an image that make it look really professional. I got that done in 10 minutes. That created a huge amount of value. If I were in practice in a small law firm, I'm pretty sure I would get £20 a month value from that. I'm not in practice anymore. That might be a terrible example. Panel, over to you. Just wave a hand at me, and small law firm. Rachel.
Yeah, so my advice, one of the early things that I did, and that will be quite easy to do, is just to do a basic SWOT analysis of your organisation. So strengths, weaknesses, opportunities and threats in relation to AI, because that will really help you focus on where to spend your time and efforts, because you can't do all of it. And make sure that whatever you're doing is aligned to your firm strategy. So look at your firm strategy first before you decide what you want to do, because an AI strategy, doesn't stand alone. It sits in the context of what your firm does and who it's focused on. Go back to, what is the value that you're trying to create? How much is it going to cost, and what your return on investment is going to be? And there's a formula that a professor shared with me quite recently, which is IT plus OO equals EOO. And that means IT plus old organisation equals expensive old organisation, which comes back to the point that if you could buy all this tech, but if you don't actually know what you're going to do it and how you're going to use it and make that change happen within your organisation, you're just adding more cost to your bottom line.
Fantastic.
Yeah, can I just add to that? I think the power of generative AI has the capability of leveling up the playing field. So smaller organizations, smaller law firms will be able to benefit from it.
Excellent. Okay, thank you. So I won't go to you, Nigel, but we've got, because I want to get to our next question, and we've got plenty coming in. So got one from Zachary. I might have, apologies if I've mangled the translation. Really interesting question. So if AI is an intelligent assistant, why will lawyers need intelligent assistants? And in that case, how will future partners in law firms be forged? So and it's a question that often comes up, which is if a lot of what you called, Nigel, busy work, the lower complexity work is taken away, historically that's formed, a big part of the training that younger lawyers have gone through. What does the future development of lawyers look like, panel?
So, go on, Nigel.
Go on. Let's you first dibs on this, Nigel. Then we'll go to Rachel.
I think it's a huge. It's a really important question. It's a big one, and I don't think it's limited to just lawyers, right? I think this is what is the future development path for anyone moving into growing their career, particularly in professional services, right? So I'll give you my context. Started as a consultant, spent a lot of time messing around with PowerPoint. In the same way, if you're a lawyer, you will spend your time just absolutely nailing your documentation. Now, some of this will go, but I think the way I'm leaning into this is I was thinking, well, if I hadn't done that stuff and Gen AI was around, it did it all for me, how would I know how to make presentations really zingy? And I just thought, do you know what? That isn't the value. The value was, what is the content? What is the context? What is the analysis on top? And I think that's probably where the push for learning will have to be. You will have very quick ways to get your summaries or your answers, but actually it's the polish on top that we'll probably need to really all reskill ourselves on, or really learn how we do in a much more in-depth way, because that's where the value will be.
Fantastic. Rachel, were you going to come in on that one?
Yeah, so it depends how you deploy AI. If you just use AI to reduce your headcount and drive efficiencies, rather than focusing on better outcomes, then you'll end up in a situation where if you don't use it, you lose it. So you'll lose that skill set ultimately. So I do think it needs to be something that you use alongside your traditional work and that field work that lawyers do in terms of learning their trade needs to continue. I think there's an opportunity to learn faster. So thinking about how this new technology can help us learn in a better, quicker, faster way to acquire those skills. There are different skills that are going to be needed in the future. And certainly within our organisation, there's been a focus on ensuring that lawyers also have tech skills. So there are new skills that are required in addition to the traditional ones. And then there's a piece around a real focus on critical thinking and ensuring that lawyers almost have this skill, the same skill that journalists have, which is making sure that you fact check from multiple sources rather than just relying on one, particularly in a world where there's a lot of deep fake happening.
Fabulous. Thank you.
Just one quick point, Mark. It's an evolution. We used to look at books. Now we do research from our desktop, and it's just another step in that process as the legal profession embraces technology.
Fabulous. Thank you. So I've got a whole bunch more questions we're not going to get to, some fascinating ones about litigants in person, around access to justice, around moving cloud service. There's one I think we can do quickly to wrap up on. The Skill Burst course appears to be aimed at law firms. Is there something equivalent for in-house lawyers? Anything to add on that? And what I'd say is watch this space from Lexis. So as part of our AI Insider program, we will absolutely be doing education-focused sessions. Clive, Rachel, Nigel, any other resources you would point people to?
A number of business schools do run online AI courses. They're not specific to in-house legal, but they are generally of interest to the broader business community. So that would be a good place to start. A lot of them are online.
Absolutely, and some of the big tech providers, Microsoft, Google, all do kind of generative AI 101 programs, which might be helpful. So we are pretty much at time now. Firstly, thank you all for giving your time. I hope this session was useful. If there are things that you would like from future sessions, drop us a line here at Lexis. Secondly, huge thanks to the organizational team that put this together, the unsung heroes. I won't name you all, but thank you at Lexis for making it happen. And of course, a massive thank you to our amazing panel, to Clive, Rachel and Nigel. You have been absolutely stunning, created a huge amount of value for everyone. All that remains for me to say is have a great rest of the day. Thank you, and I hope this was useful. Bye-bye.
Bye.